Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at the Fellblade, looking at the Space Marine version of this tank. And as for the location of this datasheet, you'll find this in the Index Imperial Armor Compendium book. So it obviously won't be in your Space Marine Codex. So let's begin with the review. So it's going to be one of your Lord of War options for your army build. It's coming in at 31 power level or 600 points. Now there will be more points on top of this with the weapons and whatnot. But as for its base cost, it's 600. Now, due to the fact that it's a Lord of War model, you're going to need to take either one of two detachments. So either it's going to be a super heavy auxiliary detachment or a super heavy detachment. Now, if you're taking it as a super heavy auxiliary detachment, it previously was 3 command points. But since the chapter approved, you do get 2 command points back, providing that it's from the same faction as your Warlord. So if it's the same faction as your Warlord, you get 2 command points back. So effectively, it'll cost you 1 command point for this detachment, for that one single Lord of War model. Now there is a little bit of a downside to this, because no type of auxiliary detachments can never gain detachment abilities. For example, your Space Marine chapter abilities, it can't be gaining any of those whatsoever. So if you are playing, for example, the Dark Angels chapter, it can't be gaining the Grim Resolve ability if it stays stationary, a +1 to hit, because that's a detachment ability. Now if you were to play a super heavy detachment, so not a super heavy auxiliary detachment, you will be able to gain those buffs, but it's now going to cost you 6 command points and you're going to need 3 Lord of War models, which is obviously quite expensive in terms of points outlay. Now it's 6 command points as opposed to 3 because it's got the Titanic keyword, which we'll go over in a bit when we go over the faction keywords. Let's get on with the datasheet for the Fellblade. So it does have a degrading stat line. It starts off with a movement of 10 inches, weapon skill 5+, so not 6+, they're not too bad. Ballistic skill 3+, strength 8 and toughness 8. Wounds 26, attack 6, leadership 9 and a 2+ save. So when it goes to 13 wounds or less, the movement halves to 5 inches, it goes down to ballistic skill 4+, and the attacks go to d6. And then when it goes down to 6 wounds or less, it's only going to be able to move 3 inches, ballistic skill value of 5+, and only d3 attacks. Now there are ways to keep the best bracketed stat line, which we'll go over later in the video, but the noteworthy stats there are the weapon skill of a 5+ as opposed to 6, which means it's reasonable in melee with 6 attacks. That toughness being 8 and a 2+ armor save as well makes it a very resilient model, especially with 26 wounds. Okay, on to the actual abilities for this tank. It's got Angels of Death, because of course it's a Space Marine model. So it's going to have, and they shall know no fear, not going to make any impact whatsoever with this model. It's got Bolt of Discipline, that's also not going to have any effect. So it's then got Shock Assault, so in the first round of combat it will have an additional attack. Then of course it's got the combat doctrines for the extra added AP, depending on the doctrine. It's then got Martial Legacy. Now, even though it only costs you 1 command point to field with the super heavy auxiliary detachment, it's also going to cost you a command point to field because of this Martial Legacy ability. So unfortunately it will cost you a total of 2 command points when you're taking a Fellblade. And then finally, because it's a vehicle, it will explode. And on a roll of a 6, units within 2d6 suffer d6 mortal wounds, so fairly large explosion there, with a potential range of 12 inches all the way around. Then as for the actual faction keywords, it's got the Imperium keyword of course, the chapter keyword, it's a vehicle, it's Titanic, it's got the smokescreen keyword, and then the machine spirit keyword as well for a stratagem. Now the one in particular I want to talk about before we move on is the Titanic keyword, which allows it to actually fall back and still fire as normal. So it's very important, that one. If it does get tied up in combat, it can simply fall back and still shoot, especially as you're going to see in a moment, some of the weapons have the blast ability, so you really want to be firing that, and you can't do that when you're within combat. So let's get onto the weapons then, because it's got quite a few here. So let's begin with what it's actually equipped with. So it's got a Demolisher Cannon, it's got the Fellblade Accelerator Cannon, it's got 2 Quad Las Cannons, a Twin Heavy Bolter, and then the Crushing Tracks. So the first one, which is the Demolisher Cannon, 24-inch range, heavy d6, strength 10, -3 AP, and the damage is d6, and it's got the blast ability. Now normally I don't quite like the blast ability because once you get tagged in combat you can't fire it, but as we just mentioned, it's a Titanic model, it can simply fall back and then pick its target. 24-inch range isn't the biggest range, and it's got a bit of an unreliable amount of shots with d6, but strength 10 should be wounding most things on the 2+, unless of course it's another vehicle model, then it'll be a 3+. -3 AP is not so bad, damage d6 is a little bit unreliable as well, but it's not too bad. We then get on to the Fellblade Accelerator Cannon. So before selecting your targets, you select one of the profiles below to make the attacks with. So you've got the HE shells, which are the high explosive shells, 72-inch range, heavy 2d6, strength 8, -3 AP, and the damage is 2 with the blast ability. So with it being heavy 2d6, you've got an average of 7 shots coming from that at strength 8 as well. This is a real good infantry killer, especially other marine models with 2 wounds. It's going to be absolutely tearing through those, and with the blast ability as well, you could potentially maximize customise on those bigger horde units if you needed to. Then it's got the AE shells, which are more precision based. They're 72-inch range as well, but they're only heavy 2, so you only get 2 shots with this, but they're strength 14, minus 4 AP, and their damage is a flat 6. So this is when you want to pinpoint an exact target, such as a vehicle or tank or dreadnought, that sort of thing, and you just want to be blowing it up off the board. With a ballistic skill value of a 3+, you'd hope to get 2 shots, at least 1 to go through there. And then you should really be wounded on a 2+, unless it's those toughness 8 models, and it will still be a 3+. Minus 4 AP will be plenty unless there's an inbound save, and then that damage is just tasty, isn't it? Damage 6 for each and every wound that goes through. So if you really get lucky with this and get 2 wounds through, that's just going to be straight 12. The next one is the quad las cannons, and it's got 2 of them. So they're 48-inch range, and they're both heavy 4, so that's 8 shots with those quad las cannons. Strength 9, minus 3 AP, and the damage is D6. So quite like a single las cannon there, but you're going to have 8 shots in total at strength 9. That's pretty decent as well. You can already see there's a lot of strength and a lot of damage coming out of this vehicle. And then finally, in terms of the range attacks, it's got a twin heavy bolter, which is another decent range here. 36-inch range, heavy 6, strength 5, minus 1 AP, 2 damage. So another infantry killer again. Should be wounded on 3s, maybe 4s. Minus 1 AP puts them on an okay save, I guess. And 2 damage a pop. Not too shabby. Now in terms of melee, it's got the crushing tracks, and because it's got 6 attacks, and in fact it's 7 on the charge due to shock assault, with the 5+ weapon skill, you should be getting on average 2 hits there going through, possibly 3, minus 2 AP, and the damage is D3. Now don't expect too much from that, but as far as vehicles go, that's not too bad going. They normally don't do much, they normally hit on 6s and don't do anything at all. But something to bear in mind, the actual strength value of this tank is strength 8. Wounded on a 2, wounded on a 3, again depends on the target. Okay, so then we get onto the war gear options. There's quite a few options here. The first one is to swap out the 2 quad las cannons and replace them with 2 laser destroyers. So let's check that one out to begin. So you pay 10 points per laser destroyer, and of course you're going to get 2 of them, that'll be 20 points in total. It loses a little bit of range because it's only 36-inch range. It loses a shot per weapon because it's only heavy 3, so that'll be a total of 6 shots there. However, the strength does go up to strength 10, the AP goes up to minus 4 AP, and the damage is D3 plus 3, which on average is damage 5 as opposed to D6 with the quad las cannons. So it kind of depends what you're going to be doing with this vehicle. If you're pushing it forwards, then I'd say definitely take this one because of that extra damage. Yes, you're getting less shots, but that extra damage isn't too bad. Now on average, if you're going against a toughness 7 vehicle, and you stick with the quad las cannons, you're doing about 10 damage on average, whereas if you swap them out for the laser destroyers, on average you're going to be doing about 13. Of course that's just averages, the dice are dice at the end of the day, but for me, if I was going a bit close range with my tank, I'd be swapping them out for the laser destroyers. If you're staying back, then yeah, keep the las cannons. The second option here is to swap out the twin heavy bolter for a twin heavy flamer for 10 points. We all know what this is, 12-inch range, heavy 2d6, so an average of 7 hits there, strength 5, minus 1 AP, 1 damage, and they automatically hit of course. Again, this is for a more forward thinking tank, so if you're going forward with this thing, 12-inch range isn't going to be that difficult to achieve, or if you're going to be getting charged by a more aggressive opponent, this is going to really help you in Overwatch as well, because they automatically hit of course. So again, it all depends on what you're doing with this vehicle. If you're staying back, keep the heavy bolter, but if you're not, the heavy flame is a good option. Then the last bullet point there, you can take one of the following. So there's 4 options here. There's a heavy bolter, a heavy flamer, a multi-melter, and a storm bolter. All 4 of those are quite basic options. The heavy bolter's 3 shots at 36-inch range, strength 5, minus 1 AP, 2 damage. The heavy flamer, very similar to the twin heavy flamer we've just spoke about, except it's 1d6, not 2. Same stat line. That one's going to be costing you 15 points, just like the heavy bolter was 15 points as well. The multi-melter is 25 points, 24-inch range, heavy 2, strength 8, minus 4 AP, damage D6, or D6 plus 2 if it's within 12-inch range. And then that final one is the storm bolter for only 5 points, 24-inch range, rapid fire 2, strength 4, no AP, 1 damage. I probably wouldn't ever take the storm bolter if I'm honest. Even if you're playing Imperial Fist, it's not going to interact with the chapter tactics because it's a Lord of War model. Probably never take the storm bolter. Out of the 4 options there, if I was going close, I'd be taking the multi-melter. If I was staying quite far back, I'd probably take the heavy bolter. But the heavy flamer is also there to pair off with a twin heavy flamer if you're going to be getting really close. But it wouldn't be my number 1 pick there. So in terms of the loadouts, if you're going to be staying back at a distance, the only change I'd really make is to get that twin heavy bolter as an additional weapon. All the other weapons within the standard loadout are pretty decent, I wouldn't change them. But if you are going quite close, then these are the options I'd take. I'd take the laser destroyers, I'd take the multi-melter and the twin heavy flamer. That is going to cost you a lot more points, but they're going to be a lot more valuable if you're going up at close range. So let's check out some of the stratagems that are available for a Fellblade. So you've got the smokescreen stratagem because it's got the smokescreen keyword of course. If you pop this, it's going to be 1 command point, and it'll be a -1 to hit your tank for your opponent in the shooting phase. You then got Armor of Contempt because it's a vehicle, which is a 5+ feel no pain save against mortal wounds. And then Power of the Machine Spirit, so very similar to Land Raiders there. Done in the command phase, you select your Machine Spirit model. Until your next command phase, the model is considered to have full wounds remaining for the purposes of determining which characteristics of the profile to use. So if it has been severely damaged and it's on its second or last bracket, and you really want to be firing at full ballistic skill and having the full movement of 10 inches as well, you want to be popping this stratagem, so you got that 10-inch movement, hitting on 3s, and even in close combat 6 attacks. Now in terms of other units that are going to synergize quite nicely with the Fellblade, you've got the Primaris Tech Marine, or any Tech Marine really. I've gone with the Primaris one here. Because of the abilities that this guy's got, so Blessing on the Omnisire, so you can be healing D3 lost wounds to the vehicle within 3 inches, and then Awaken the Machine Spirits, which is a massive one in my opinion. A vehicle within 3 inches again, they're going to get a +1 to their hit rolls. So all those range attacks that we just mentioned are going to be hitting on 2s as opposed to 3s, and if you're investing 600+ points into all that weaponry, why not hit on 2s, right? Now if you wanted to further upgrade the Tech Marine to a Master of the Forge, one of the abilities that the Master of the Forge has is that the Blessing of the Omnisire ability will regain 3 lost wounds as opposed to D3 lost wounds, so that's something you might want to think about. Another thing you might want to think about is a Librarian. It could be any type of Librarian, using the Librarius Discipline. One of the powers he's got access to is the Psychic Fortress, which simply gives a chapter unit within 6 inches of the Psyker a 5+ invuln save. Because it doesn't have an invuln save, although it is toughness 8 and has a 2+ armor save, it would be quite nice to also add a 5+ invulnerable save on top of that. So let's get on with the summary for the Fellblade then. So starting with the good, it's very resilient, 26 wounds, toughness 8, 2+ armor save. It's going to take a whole lot of your opponent's army to just deal with this thing. It's got a lot of high strength weapons, it's got a lot of high damage weapons, and the fact that it's a Titanic model, so it can simply fall back and shoot. It's not going to get caught up in melee, especially with those blast weapons. It can be firing at the targets that you want to fire at, as opposed to the enemy unit that you're in combat with. It's not even that bad in melee. As we already mentioned, 6 attacks, 7 on the charge or if it was charged, hitting on 5s with D3 damage each time. Then you've got the option of close range weapons. If you wanted to go in with this thing, you've got all those flamer options, the multi-melter options. So depending on the way you want to use this thing, you've got options there. It's got the smoke screen option as well, so it's going to be a -1 to hit the tank for your opponent. And then finally, because of the size of this thing, it can be used to block a large area of the board. It could be, for example, there's an objective quite close, or there's a huge terrain feature and you can park right next to it just to prevent your opponent from coming in a certain direction. You've got to make them go the long way round, which is of course going to waste their movement. Now as for the bad, it's 600+ points, so it's a very expensive model. Once you start putting all the weapons on top of that, it could get really pricey. So you've kind of put all your eggs in one basket if you're taking one of these, especially in the smaller point games. So you've got to protect it at all costs. It's got that Martial Legacy ability, which is going to cost you a command point, and that's of course on top of the Super Heavy Auxiliary Detachment, which is another command point. It's then got no invulnerable save, and it's got a degrading stat line as well, so once it goes down below a certain amount of wounds, it's going to lose its effectiveness throughout the game. It's then got the risk of being wrapped around. Imagine 30 Orc boys wrapping around this thing, and then it comes to your turn and you wanted to simply fall back and fire. You're not going to be able to do so. Now there is the option of using that stratagem, Desperate Breakout, for 2 command points, but you then have to roll a d6, and on a 1 the model is simply destroyed, so you're not going to be risking that on a model that costs 600+ points. So that's going to force you to fire everything you've got within that combat, and all the heavy weapons will be a -1, and the blast weapons won't be able to fire at all because they're blast. So it's going to really nullify somewhat a lot of the tank's actual weaponry there. It's got lots of competition with other Lord of War units. Just to name a few, you've got the Astraeus or the Falchion. Both of those are quite fierce competition when going up against a Fellblade, and arguably they're actually better as well. Then the final part is the auxiliary detachments do not gain any of the buffs for your chapters. So Imperial Fist don't gain any of the extra bonuses for the bolter weapons. The Archangels aren't going to get the Grim Resolve for the +1 to hit if they stay stationary. And all the other chapters as well, they're not going to gain any of those bonuses. So let's move on to the rating today for the Fellblade. As much as this is quite a resilient vehicle, for its points cost alone, I think it's not as competitive as it should be. So for that reason, I'm going to be giving it a Planet 40k rating of 2.5 stars. So that's the video today, guys. Now, there's no shout out today simply due to the fact that I've filmed this video straight after the last one, so I haven't actually seen the comments yet of the latest Space Marine video, but keep the comments coming in for a chance to be shouted out in the next Space Marine video. Remember to drop a like and subscribe if you're new. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.